Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Keo Lubemi, and if you're just joining, I am an internationally trained lawyer based here in Calgary, Alberta. Today's video is just going to be me sharing a couple of tips. In my very first YouTube video, I talked about the 1L recruitment process, and I know that a couple of people who applied to that cohort may have been invited for interviews and all of the selection processes in Alberta. And I just wanted to share a couple of tips regarding how to prepare for your interview, what to expect, how to prepare for these things, the number of rounds it could be, and some other functions that could happen during this period. Now, this is a very particularly challenging period. Because if you look online, you probably may not find any materials or anything speaking to what to expect when you're to carry out, this recruitment process. A lot of law firms would potentially link you up with people within the offices if you wanted to, speak to anybody to just get tips. So, tip number one would be reach out to the law firm to ask if there's anybody within the firm that they'll be happy to introduce you to. So many firms prefer this where you talk to somebody within the firm. And so the HR director, the recruitment director, legal talent specialist or director could put you in contact with any of their lawyers, or most of the time it could even be an articling student because that person is closer to you and is able to relate to how you're feeling now. And so you could have that chat with an articling student, or it could also be with an associate, or even certain periods might be with relatively younger partners who are interested in speaking to you, sharing tips. And most of the time, some of these people are members of the recruitment committee themselves. So they know what the recruitment committee is looking out for, and then they can share tips based on all of that. So that's the first tip I would be sharing. One is reach out to the firms, see if they can link you up with one or two members who can, of course, go on coffee day meetings with you, speak to you about the firm, get to tell you about the culture of the firm, how the firm operates. Sometimes they could mention the number of stages that the interview process could be. Many law firms around here would have about two or three different stages of recruitment, and could also have a social event. And out, as we go on, also address some of those other issues. So the central idea for this one first is to think about the kind of recruitment that's happening. So if this is the 1L recruit, and I'll just be speaking specifically to this, even though I didn't really participate in the 1L recruit, but I have friends who did. Um, they made most people who are being recruited at this point are those who are in their first year of law school, who would also join those who have already been recruited through the 2L summer that occurred sometime late last year. They would join this cohort and then resume for the summer position between May and August of the year, after which they would get most the ones who perform and meet the criteria of the firm would usually get offers for to start their articling when they are done with their 3L. So usually those offers may be dated for 2 years ahead of time. And that's a really interesting development. If, for instance, you as an internationally trained lawyer get selected in that recruitment, it could be a perfect avenue for you depending on the stage you are at in terms of your requalification. So if you're new to the country and you've not even say completed your NCAs yet, or you've not even gotten assessed, it may be best for you to get an offer at this point, such that by the time you're ready to resume, the firm would already be ready to take you. However, if you're someone who has really completed um, the part, your NCAs, your NCA exams, and you're almost ready to article, or could be articling in 1 year instead of 2 years, generally 1L may not be the most ideal thing for you, but it has happened, and we've seen this happen so many times within the ITL community, where law firms would then ask these people to either resume directly for an articling position later that year when the articling cohort is resuming, or where um, they could resume that summer position and be given an articling offer for the next year, or even to resume immediately after the summer is over instead of waiting for 2 years. And this leads to the next question regarding, for an ITL, what should you disclose and what you should not disclose? I have received tons of questions from a lot of ITLs in my DMs, on all of my social media regarding this. That what should I disclose? Should I mention to them that I'm an internationally trained lawyer? I have written my NTA exam, so I'm about to write. The key thing here is, I would say, you should disclose. One is, it put, especially where you're ready to article. So this is like you've completed your NTAs, or you are about completing your NTAs. It is best for you to disclose, because then the firm can make an informed decision regarding whether they want to take you or not. So the firm can look at it to say, do we have an extra space or an extra slot in the articling cohort for this person to start immediately? Or, and then if there's a possibility for that, they can make an arrangement to see how they can fit you in. In the situation where there is no possibility for you to start with the articling cohort, they can determine whether, if they take you in as a summer student, can they put you in the next set of articling students that will be coming in. So it is very necessary for you to disclose. Let them know that you are an internationally trained lawyer. You've gotten your documents assessed if you've done that. If you've written the NTA exams, let them know how many exams you've written, when potentially you could be ready for articling. What the other side to it is that if you don't disclose, who loses anything there? You are the one losing, because the firm does not know that you're ready to article, and so they can take you in as a regular 1L student and then offer you an articling position 2 years down the line, and then you would have wasted some period between when you should ideally be articling and when you should be moving on to the next stage of your career. The next point I need to mention, that's tip number 2: disclose as much as you can, right? Also, do not try to shy away from your previous experience that you've had from any country you're coming from. So for me, for instance, I basically worked in the banking and finance, a bit of power projects finance back home. And so when I came into this country and I was going through my own interview process, I made sure that every firm that I was talking to knew that I had experience in this particular area, even though I could be open to learning a new practice area if that's where they will be willing to accommodate me. But if there is something for me in this particular practice area, I would be willing to do that. What that does is that they're able to also make a projection based on what could be happening in the future. There's always a lot of movement in all of these firms, especially at the beginning of the year. So if they know your practice area and they can see your experience and see that this experience tallies with the type of work that they do, you become a lot more valuable to them. And so they can create space for you. So again, it's important that you disclose as much as you can. Don't try to hold back thinking that you're being smart, because what you could be doing there is that you could be shutting yourself out, and that may not be to your own advantage. So tip number 3: highlight your experience. Do not try to downplay your experience. Now, tip number 4 really is about the interview process itself. Of course, you know that when you apply, the firms will review all of these applications, and of course, they go through like a CVing process. So this CVing process might take a week, 2 weeks, or even more. But usually, they also all interview during the period that the Law Society would have allowed them to. For Alberta, for 1L recruitment in Alberta, that was this week of, I think this week of February 12th, and I think up until next week of starting like February 21 or 2021 or something like that. So that's the period for interviews and all of the activities that will happen. And this is a really stressful period. I must say to you, this is a very stressful period, especially if you get invited for interviews by 2 or 3 firms. A lot of these firms would have so many social activities. They could potentially have in-person interviews. One thing I know that is guaranteed is that there's no one firm that is interviewing you just once. you're going to have at least almost two interviews and potentially a social event. It could be just a coffee meeting with some members of the recruitment committee who, even though it looks a lot casual, is still a sort of assessment. Or it could be that coffee meeting as well as a social events like a cocktail evening, where you're meeting with other members of the firm, other students who are also going through the recruitment process. But what's the first interview process usually like? So that way, that first interview, you're probably meeting with members of the recruitment committee. It could, for some firms, they like to switch it up. So you could have a partner and an associate, or you could have both associates, or you could have senior associates, or you could even, you'd almost always have one member of the um, HR team joining or somebody listening in the background, and they would ask you different questions there. Now, I can't say what questions a law firm is going to ask you. One is that's really breaching into whatever they'll be asking you, and two, I just can't really determine. But what would happen is that you'd usually meet some members of the firm, and at this point, they would probably interview you around general questions. Uh, it could Some firms only ask every candidate the same type of question, like exactly the same question, because they're trying to cut that unconscious bias. While some others would ask you questions from anywhere. So some could ask you based on your resume, while some could just ask you general questions to try to figure out where you are at in life, what your priorities are, what your social skills are. But one thing that is common is that all the firms would generally question you around your social skills. This is because the way I personally think that the way law is perceived in Canada is that it is such a social discipline where you must be able to relate with people. People must feel comfortable to work with you in the office, and then you must also have some level of confidence to be able to talk to clients, and you must also be able to build relationship with other members of the firm. And one of the first things that would also happen is that when you're invited to an interview, all of the firms, I have seen this based on my experience and, of course, the experience of other friends and colleagues, that the firms would send you the names of people that you'll be meeting during your interview. Some may go ahead to also add their profiles to it, but if they don't, it then becomes your own job to go on the internet, go to their website, try to read about the people who will be interviewing you. If you can go on LinkedIn, try to understand the profile of those who will be interviewing you. This is important for two things. One is that it helps you feel a lot more relaxed and familiar. So they don't look strange to you when you meet them, either you're meeting them in person or if it's going to be a virtual interview, you don't feel out of depth if you get to meet them. And then secondly is that it could also help you tailor questions for them. Now, this is one mistake you must never make in Canada. After each, when you're rounding off your interviews, you'd be given the opportunity to ask questions. You must always ask at least one or two questions. And what I always recommend is have about two or three questions such that you can throw one question to each member of the panel. Now, this again would depend on how many minutes you have left. So each interview usually they would have mentioned in the email whether the interview will last for 20 minutes or whether it will last for 30 minutes. I'm not sure that I've ever seen it go for longer than 30 minutes. So mostly it is always 20 minutes. So you want to be mindful of the time, of the time they have taken when they were asking you questions, so that when you're asking questions, you can also ask either or both members of the panel questions that either or both of them can answer. That aside, you want to make sure that the questions revolve around one, something that could be personal as well as business related. So, for instance, people could ask about how the firm reacted to COVID, how they were able to adjust, and all of that. Or someone else could be asking about what have you really enjoyed working at this firm. What you're doing is you're giving them the opportunity to talk about themselves or to talk about the business, and then that way I think the image it creates is that you're someone who either cares about people or you care about the business. So if you can ask questions that go around these two areas, or just ask something that is really really genuine. The other thing you also want to really pay attention to is how, and this, I don't know, I've lost count now, maybe tip number 4 is um, how you answer questions. And this is very important because, like I said, the interview could run for 20 minutes, usually between 20 and 30 minutes. So you don't have all of the time in the world to be seeing a lot of stories. Know how you have to answer questions and what the method most people recommend that you use to answer interview questions here for legal jobs will be the STAR method. So that's the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So if someone asks you, how do you deal with difficult colleagues at work? You don't need to say everything in the world. So think about it. Was there a situation where you had a colleague that was really problematic? What was that particular situation? What task brought both of you together? What was the action you took, and what was the result of that action? Once you highlight it that way, saying you've already said a full story without going on for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So in 1 minute, 2 minutes, you've already answered that question, and then they are able to ask you another question, and then you probably have a bit of time to be able to familiarize. Also, so if there's anything, please pay a lot of attention to the STAR method. Have somebody you can practice with. So that's another tip. Have someone that you can practice with that can listen to you, tell you whether your stories make sense, whether it portrays you in a good light. Because again, another mistake people can make is you may be trying to answer the question, but it could be portraying you as an arrogant person instead. So in trying to please the panel, make sure that you're not shooting yourself in the foot. So let someone else listen to you first. So if you anticipate some questions that they could ask you, since I've told you now that a lot of the questions will focus around social skills and um, situational tests, questions. How do you react in certain situations? Let people ask some of these questions. If possible, formulate or have some of these stories already at the back of your mind and split it into that star method. That way, someone can listen to you and tell you, is this story painting you in a good light? Is it letting them know that you're a good person, you're someone they would enjoy working with, or is it painting you as an arrogant person who only believes your own ideas are the best and no other person can come close? That aside, the other part of this too is that at every given point, so once your interview is over, I have found this, I don't really understand the rationale for it, but I've found that uh, especially within Canadian law firms, that they particularly like it when you send them a thank you note after the email, and it is very important. So send a thank you note to the persons who interviewed you. And one key thing you can do to set yourself apart from every other person, because there's belief that the indigenous students, the local students are going to do that. But what you can do that can set you apart is when you're sending a thank you note, mention something that stood out during the interview. So, say for instance, you said something to during the interview that made everybody laugh. You could say, "Oh yeah, it was really nice sharing my experience about this during the interview." Or if you answered a particular question that was really remarkable, you can say that, oh, if you also would like to learn more about this situation, or if you'd like me to expatiate a little bit about this, I'm very happy to provide you further information. Or if you need, or if you have more questions you want me to answer over email, I am happy to answer. What that means is you're really letting them know that you enjoyed the time you spent with them, because this is a two-way thing, right? You are interviewing them as well as they are interviewing you. You're trying to know whether they're a good fit for you, while they're also trying to know whether you're a good fit for them. So let it be a two-way thing. Let them know that you enjoyed the time you spent with them and that you're really looking forward to the next stage of the interview. Now, once this is done, and hopefully you're progressing to the next stage, you have, of course, will get a similar email. They might tell you to pick a time that you're comfortable with within a certain time slot, and then we'll give you the details of that interview. They would also let you know the people who will be interviewing you, just as they did in the first stage. Now, when they do that, your job, again, is to research the people you'll be meeting this time and repeat the other tips I already gave for the first interview that you did. Again, when you're done with that second interview, remember to send a thank you note individually to each of the people that interviewed you and leave something fresh on their minds. Now, different firms may have, some may have like a get together. It could be a dinner with everybody, or it could be a cocktail, or it could just be a fun activity. Whatever it is, most firms would always have a sort of social activity to end the recruitment season. Now, many people think this is just an opportunity for you to come have some nice wine and good food, all free of charge. No. One is that it's an opportunity for you to meet with larger members of the firm. And two is that it's also uh, a test of your social skills. So, in as much as people are conversing with you, they're also making mental notes of your social skills and you're relating with other people. And this is where you can really show your strength. You can show that you're able to interact with so many people all at the same time while leaving each person with a personal touch. So at this social event, one is I always want to encourage that you come in early. So when you come in early, what that does for you is that you're able to survey the environment. You're able to perhaps pick a nice starting spot. You're able to know how you want to walk the room. And now, what is walking the room? Walking, and this. Let me take a short break there. So when you go to networking events or social events like this, it's very easy for you to just come in and stay in one corner and just be looking at everybody and only have a chat with whoever talks to you. But that would be you doing yourself a disservice. So you should learn to walk the room. That is, know how to start from point A, having a designated point Z, and knowing how you're going to move from each level of the room, talking to different people. So walking the room is a very important social skill that you must learn to have when you're going for the firm's social event for this recruitment. So once you coming in early would help you do an on the spot analysis of the room, and then you can obviously already meet some people who would come in early. Maybe some members of the firm who have some free time may already just come there to see what's happening. There you can already make an introduction and even start chatting with some people. Once that is done, the next thing you can also do, is to just settle in, relax, start to enjoy the ambience, such that when everything happens, you're not feeling tensed. Further, other students too may also start tripping in at this point, and so you're already trying to establish at least a social connection with these people, the other people you're competing against. So what you do here is, because they are going to also be assessing you on how you relate with your fellow students, the fact that you came in early and you already have some rapport with some of these people would already portray you in a natural light, such that as their own friends who are also interviewing are coming in, you're just able to already have some introduction. So that way you've already cut down how much time you need to spend trying to get familiar with them when the social event itself is going on. So you see the point, see the logic. Now, when the event itself starts, be careful not to dwell too much on one person, except where someone is really engaging you. So, for instance, during one of the social events I attended, there was a partner that, um, for whatever reason, was interested in the research topic that I did for my second master's at the University of Calgary. And the moment I was discussing this topic with him, he was so interested, he was so engrossed in what I was saying, and we stood on just one spot for almost 1 hour dissecting my research topic, right? And as soon as I noticed that I was spending so much time with this person, even though he was interested, I then had to systematically try to bring that conversation to a close because I also needed to walk the room a little bit more. So one thing there is, and as you walk the room, you also want to ensure that you leave each person with something. Now, this is where it is tricky. It is possible for you to just be discussing law with everybody here. that could be boring in a social setting. So try to find out other interests that they have. Who likes football? So there was a Super Bowl over the weekend. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about some other major activity that happened? Do you want to talk about some nice concert that is happening in Canada or that was happening in the States? Is there a major activity on the news that might capture someone's attention? So those are like the little things you want to talk about, and also make a mental note of what you say to each person. Now, this is a lot of work, but it is really worth it, and you should really do it. So, for instance, during my time, I was talking with somebody who um, has interest in mixed martial arts, and I was discussing boxing and UFC, and that was something that when I was sending a thank you note at the end of the night, I mentioned that, oh, it was really lovely and discussing boxing with you. I had somebody else who had interest in Chelsea Football Club, and that was a note I could put in. I had someone else that had interest in golf, I had interest in negotiations, and those were the things I could put in each of those emails. Of course, the partner that we were discussing about my research topic, that was of course what I put in the email. That was lovely discussing my topic with you. If you have further questions, if you want me to send you the finished work, I am happy to do that. What that does is it creates a lasting impression on their minds that this person was enjoyable. And when they meet as a committee to then make the final recruitment decision, each person can remember what you said. Because one of the things that also happens is when they are making that final shortlist of candidates, people would have sponsors. Now, this is the part that nobody really gets to say, but people really have sponsors. So you have someone who is speaking for you in that final selection uh, meeting. So if you have one person speaking for you and another person is speaking for another person, imagine if 3 or 4 people in a 10-man recruitment committee are speaking for you because one, they enjoyed chatting with you, two, they remember enjoyable moments they had during those things, and it was in the email. And so each person can say, oh, I remember discussing this with this person, and another person says, I discussed this other thing with this person. So what they see is they're able to see a well-rounded individual. But if you discuss just one topic with all members of the committee, they're only seeing one side of you, and then you would have shot yourself in the foot. So this is a major tip that a lot of people don't also get. So what am I saying? Research the firm, research the people that will be interviewing you, build accurate social skills, network. If you have the coffee, one other thing, yeah, dress. You're dressing. You want to go there looking really good, right? Dressing so well, but also you don't want to look too formal, except where the invitation has said it is strictly formal. But most times we'll probably say business casual or semi-formal. So you want to balance your dressing, making sure that you look really good, you look really presentable, and you're also not looking too casual. So make sure that everything leaves an impression on their minds. One thing too with that social gathering is you have to be very careful, one, to not be too quiet, because it's always going to be like a circle, right? So there are other people on the table or there are other people there, and so a lot of people are really trying to make an impression, so everybody is really trying to talk at the same time. Be very careful of that. Be careful not to look like you're not confident, but also be careful to not look overconfident and arrogant. So try to maintain a balance. So when you see that people are really trying to outdo each other, be that voice of reason that steps a little bit back, makes everybody talk, and then you give the master stroke that changes everybody's direction. What that does is it makes you look like the wise person. What you just did was you took your time to listen to what everybody was saying. And so you were able to say something that people have not really thought about. While others were really trying to impress, you actually impressed without trying to make others look bad. Um, and also, do not feel compelled to agree with what appears to be the popular position. Sometimes partners or whoever is on your table are intentionally throwing some questions that people are just want to agree to, right? So everybody just wants to say, oh yeah, that is this particular position. Meanwhile, it may not be the best. So even if it was the best position and you have a contrary position, do not feel like you have to say yes to that particular thing. So if you have a better position or if you have a different mindset, feel free to express, but make sure you back up what you're saying. So let it be reasonable. Let everybody be able to understand that you're saying something different from what everybody is trying to say. And then, of course, um, once you spend a particular time on that table and you see that you've not spoken to other people in the room, make a conscious effort to walk the room. I think that if you do all of these things, and with God and luck and grace and favor on your side, you should be able to secure an offer. Let me know if you have other tips that you want to share with other people, especially if you've gone through this process. And if you have other tips or if you have questions, please put them in the comment section. I would really be interested and glad to read from you. And remember to like, leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe if you have not.